The strangest part is not that the founders wrote secrets. It's that some of those secrets still have no key. Letters moved through post offices that could not be trusted. Diplomats carried code books that could not be stolen. Washington used invisible ink. Jefferson built a cipher machine so advanced the Army later adopted something similar more than a century afterwards. And then, somehow, Jefferson seems to have put his machine away. That's the part that bothers me. Because these were not bored men playing with puzzles. These were people building a country while assuming someone else was reading their mail. And too often, they were right. In the revolutionary world, a private letter was never completely private. European powers had used black chambers for centuries. Secret offices, open mail, copied letters, deciphered messages. The Americans entered that world at a disadvantage. Their systems were often informal, amateur, improvised. But the danger was real. A letter would expose a spy ring. A political opinion could end up in the newspaper. A careless phrase could become a weapon. So the founders began writing in letters. Plain words mixed with numbers, names hidden in Greek letters, pages, columns, and word positions pulled from agreed-upon books. It sounds quaint now. It was not quaint if the wrong person found the key. Thomas Jefferson was doing this early. In 1764, when he was still a young man, he wrote to his friend John Page in a strange mixture of ordinary language, Latin, and Greek-looking characters. The hidden subject was Rebecca Burwell, the young woman Jefferson wanted to marry. Her name was disguised, but only barely. 4 days later, Jefferson decided even that was too obvious. He wanted a way for them to write thoughts that would be totally unintelligible to everyone else. That sounds young, maybe a little dramatic, but it points to something that never really left him. Jefferson did not want secrecy. He wanted systems. By the 1790s, Jefferson had designed a wheel cipher. It used turning wooden discs. Letters were marked around the edges. The idea was clean. No giant code list, no dictionary to seize. No fragile sheet of substitution that ruined everything once captured. A person could line up the discs, write the message, then scramble the invisible letters into nonsense. It was not magic, it was mechanics. And for the time, it was very good mechanics. Cryptography historian David Kahn later argued that Jefferson's machine was far ahead of its day. If Jefferson had pushed it into government use, it may have resisted any code-breaking attack of the period. Instead, he appears to have filed it away and forgotten about it. That is not sinister, but it is maddening. The country had a better tool than the systems it was using, and the tool simply disappeared into paper, memory, and neglect. Washington had his own methods. His director of Secret Service, Benjamin Talmadge, devised America's first espionage code for the New York spy ring in 1778. Washington also supplied invisible ink to Talmadge. That detail sounds theatrical until you remember the stakes. If British forces deciphered the messages, the senders could be identified, arrested, hanged. A code was not decoration. It was a thin door between a name and a rope. After the war, the secrecy did not end. It became more complicated. American diplomats in Europe used nomenclature systems. Long lists where words, names, places, and syllables became numbers. A single list might include ordinary words, foreign cities, and political names, but these systems had a nasty weakness. Steal the list, and the language opens. Even without theft, the method was easy to ruin by accident. Book codes depend on page numbers, columns, word positions. One bad count, one different edition, one exhausted clerk, and the message can turn into garbage. And yet the alternative was worse. More than half of early American foreign correspondence may have ended up in British hands, so they kept coding, badly sometimes, carefully sometimes, but constantly. The fear of exposure had already been burned into the revolutionary generation. Private letters from Massachusetts officials were leaked and published in colonial newspapers. The contents enraged Americans. Crowds burned effigies. Benjamin Franklin later admitted he was the source of the leak, and he lost his post as Deputy Postmaster General. It is easy to admire the boldness, but the lesson was ugly. A private letter, once loose, could start fires, and no one who watched that happen could honestly believe paper was harmless. Not every secret writing was a cipher. Some secrets were hidden in authorship. In 1775, a 2-volume work called American Husbandry appeared in London. The author called himself, quote, an American. For more than 2 centuries, his identity remained uncertain. The book was detailed, political, and strange. It argued that Britain should not lose the wealth and potential of its American colonies. But the trail to its author ran through a planted falsehood. Inside the book were letters about a plantation supposedly in Georgia. The details were specific: 6,340 acres, a small navigable creek, a river 3 miles away, a planter who lived in Scotland, England, the West Indies, Cadiz, and Naples. That is the kind of detail that feels helpful, unless it is pointing at the wrong place. Colonial records did not fit Georgia. That was the problem. The plantation as described did not seem to belong there. Move it into neighboring South Carolina, and the shape begins to appear. The man matching the details was John Louis Gervais. His land lined up. His waterways lined up. His holdings reached the same acreage. Even the vineyards and frontier connections fit the picture. And once Gervais is identified as the letter writer, the likely recipient becomes much harder to ignore. The anonymous, an American, appears to have been Richard Oswald. Oswald is where the story folds in on itself. He was a wealthy British merchant, powerful and well-connected, and deeply tied to empire, trade, and slavery. He had reason to publish anonymously. He had reason to keep quiet. And years after apparently writing a book meant to keep the colonies inside the British Empire, he was called on by King George III to approach Benjamin Franklin about peace. He helped negotiate the Treaty of Paris. So the hidden author who wanted to preserve the empire may have helped finalize American independence. That is not a ghost story. It is stranger than that. It is history trying not to leave fingerprints. Some of these secrets were eventually opened. A hidden author was traced to a false location in a plantation letter. A mysterious book code was identified decades later. A supposedly indecipherable sample sent to Jefferson turned out to be the Declaration of Independence. But not everything unlocked. Scholars are still dealing with coded messages from the revolutionary generation. At least 3 codes have no discovered key. That detail sits there quietly, not dramatic, not cinematic. Just 3 locked doors inside the archive. The founders left behind speeches, letters, laws, and myths. They also left behind numbers where words should be. Systems abandoned, keys missing. And somewhere inside those locked passages, a country being built by men who kept proving, in ink and cipher, that they did not fully trust the world they were creating.